Hello and good morning, everybody. What is up, and welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Liz, and this is Creating Crime Time, where I'm your host. I sit down, I talk about some true crime. Now, today we're gonna do it a little bit differently. I'm gonna reiterate and re-add my art back into this channel. I know I've kind of like fallen off the bandwagon. A lot of you guys started following me because I was putting my art on my channel, and I was talking to my husband about it and talking to some of my friends, and I was just like, I need to start adding it back in, just slowly but surely. Because sometimes I like go through a rut where I'm like, fuck. Now I don't feel inspired, but even though all the cases I was covering were pretty inspirational, because I get a lot of what I try to create by like a certain feel of what I get when I'm either going through something, I'm reading something, I see something. Like a lot of people, they find their inspiration in a weird way, and I find my inspiration in a really weird way. So we're going to add it back in. And also, if you're new here, we are now in the month of April. We kicked off April with a cannibal, Alfred Packer. And today, we're also going to be talking about some more cannibals. So the whole month of April, if you're new here, we are going to be talking about true crime cases that have influenced and are partly involved in movies that have been made or just other media sources that have been made based on them. So today we're talking about the true crime case of Sawney Bean. Now, Sawney Bean is a case from Scotland. Let's wet my whistle before we start talking about this jazz, because man, it's wild. So Alexander, or Sawney, which is his nickname, Bean, there's not a definitive actual like birth date for him or birth year, so it's noted that it was between the 1500s and the 1600s, and he was born in East Lothian, Scotland. He was married to a woman named Agnes Douglas, or her nickname was Black. Now, this case is what inspired The Hills Have Eyes. And if you've never seen The Hills Have Eyes, I'm not spoiling it for you. So you can enjoy this true crime case and kind of get the gist of, you'll understand why it's based off of The Hills Have Eyes. So, Sawney grew up, his dad was a ditch digger or a hedge trimmer, and he grew up to basically take the place of his dad. And unfortunately, he knew from a young age that him trying to take over what his dad was doing wasn't going to pan out, because it's not what he was really interested in. And he also met Agnes, and he left home with her. Now, she allegedly was accused of being a witch from a young age. Like, people didn't like her because she was weird. She was out there. So them together kind of just like, they meshed really well. So they ended up in a coastal cave in Benane Head, which is between Girvan and Ballantrae in Scotland. And this cave is about 200 yards deep. Like, it's a pretty deep cave. And the entrance was blocked by water during high tide, so nobody would be able to go in. And this is where they were able to live undiscovered for 25 years. 25 years, that's a long-ass time to be hidden in a goddamn cave. So they would have children. They procreated. They had 6 daughters, 8 sons. They would have 14 granddaughters and 18 grandsons. Now, I bet you're wondering how exactly they had all these grandchildren. Well, most of these grandchildren were due to an ancestral relationship between their children or them and their children to create all of these said offspring. So, this clan, now the Bean clan basically, they survived off of laying traps for people or in ambushes at night in order to trap people, and they would rob and murder them, individuals or groups of people that would come by, and then they would discard the body after they would ravage the body of all of its meat that they could basically harvest. And they would then discard the parts, and eventually these parts would just wash up on nearby beaches. So this idea helped them to conceal their crimes by like discarding the bodies and getting rid of them. And this kind of led the villagers that were surrounding them to think that, oh, hey, maybe it was an animal attack that caused these things. Well, it wasn't an animal attack. It was actually these people doing it. It was the Bean clan. So these disappearances in the body parts kind of just like popping up everywhere didn't go unnoticed by any means. No. Like, they did not, like, the villagers were very spooked, basically, about what was happening, because here's all these people going missing, and then, bam, there's random bodies, parts just, like, coming up on the shores around them. Like, how would these people and their body parts just kind of, like, magically reappear, you know what I mean? So, basically, what then happens is that, the locals, they started like doing little searches by themselves and stuff like this. So the clan themselves, they would stay in the cave during the day, and at night, this is when they would come out. So basically, they were nocturnal. And this is how they were able to stay so quiet about their crimes, is because none of the villagers really knew that they were there. You would only see them at night. So that's how they would know that there would be other people. And most of the people that saw them would end up dying. So, and this also meant that the villagers were supremely unaware that there was people alive and that the murderers actually lived nearby. And so when they launched different searches, they couldn't access the cave because it's blocked off by water. There's no way for them to actually like look in and stuff like that. So they would just automatically write off that, oh, hey, there's nothing back there. I'm not going to search back there. You know what I mean? So they started to do more searches like off and on, because the disappearances started growing more and more. And they just didn't know what was happening. So during one search, they saw the cave, but they refused to believe that anybody was there. So they left. They didn't think of anything. So after this is when the townsfolk then became super frustrated, because they were like, what the fuck is happening? Why are these people going missing? Why is there so many dead body parts just like randomly showing up out of the blue? Like, what is going on? And they basically went on a tenetic quest for justice. And they ended up lynching innocent people for the deaths of these people. Like, because they were at wit's end. They didn't know what else to do. So even though they were doing this, the disappearances still kept happening. And they were just like, they were at wit's end. So a lot of the suspicion in the town fell on the innkeepers, because they generally were the last people to see these people that the body parts that were showing up. They were generally the last people to see them. Well, there's one night when the Bean clan ambushes a married couple. Now, this married couple is coming from a fair on horse. Thankfully, the husband is a skilled fighter, so he knows exactly how to fend for himself. Well, his wife is not as lucky as he is. His wife ends up being mauled to death by the clan when she falls off the horse and falls to the ground. Now, the husband, thankfully, before they could go and finish him off, he's able to flee. And then while he's fleeing, there's a large group of more people coming from the same fair they did that are coming towards where the Bean clan is. And they end up scurrying away. So what happens after this is that now this man tells the large group what exactly has happened. And it doesn't go, when I was reading about this, it doesn't really go into detail about exactly what the large group saw. But they end up going to basically like a town bishop, and they talk about what they saw about this clan. The Bean clan is now finally like revealed. And then it further goes to King James. Well, King James the Sixth heard of what happened, and this is when he decides to lead a search party with a team of 400 men and bloodhounds. Soon they would find this cave. And yes, when they enter is when they are absolutely horrified. Like they don't really like understand what to do, because here's this cave, like random cave they're going into, and it's only lit up by torch. So what they end up seeing is that they're surrounded by human remains hanging on the walls of the cave and scattered around. Some of the parts were hanging from the wall. There were like barrels filled with limbs and piles of stolen jewelry and heirlooms in this cave. Now, we don't exactly know what happened to the Bean clan. There's two versions of what happened, and I'll kind of go into that. So, one of the versions is that the clan was captured without fight, and they were taken to Tolbooth jail in Edinburgh. And after this, they were later transferred to either Leith or Glasgow. And it's when they were there, this is where they were executed. Now, the men were executed in such of a way that Sawney and the men, they had their genitalia cut off. And then the genitalia was then thrown into a fire. After this, their hands and their feet were severed so they would bleed to death. And then all the women and children that were remaining, they watched the men die, and then they were tied to stakes and burned alive. Now, it is said in this version of events that Sawney says, "It isn't over. It will never be over." And that's version 1. Now, version 2 is not as graphic, and basically it says that the search party placed gunpowder at the entrance of the cave, and the clan suffocated due to the inhalation of the gunpowder. I don't really know. You can believe either way of this story, but of what happened after they were discovered, but that is basically what I have found. And to this day, the legend of Sawney Bean has really changed the way people think in Scotland when it comes to cannibalism and murder and different things like that. There's also a thing called the Ballad of Sawney Bean that they have in their records, and it's called it basically states they hung them high in Edinburgh tune, and likewise their kin, and the winds blaws could on their banes, and to hell they hae gane. That's the Ballad of Sawney Bean. The kill count that they have is, I believe, 5,609. Let me find the actual number. It's a very high kill count for this clan. It is a lot of people. Let's see. Well, for total victims, it's 5,593 people that they robbed, murdered, and cannibalized. For one clan. Yeah. So this, my friends, this is the story that influenced The Hills Have Eyes. You probably can understand as to why if you have seen The Hills Have Eyes. The Hills Have Eyes basically deals with incestual. I'm not going to say a demeaning term when it comes to backland folk, basically. Even though technically that can be construed in a bad way. But if you've never seen The Hills Have Eyes, I highly recommend you see it. Watch the first one. The second one, is okay. But definitely watch the first one. And I wanted to cover this case in particular because of how fascinating it is. It's back in the 1500s, and this dude got away with pillaging, like basically destroying 5,593 people's lives with the help of his children and his wife. That's a whole lot of balls this dude has in order to do that. Like, I don't think there is a man or a woman, a person, we'll say person because everything is PC when it comes to genderization. I don't think there's a person now in today's world that would be able to pull off the same scheme that him and his clan did. There is no way in hell anybody would be able to do something as gruesome and terrifying as Sawney Bean and the Bean clan. I don't think there will ever be a person that would be as terrifying to think of, especially where in Scotland they still talk about this. This is legendary lore in the country of Scotland. They still talk about this to this day. And I mean, as they should, because it's a prominent part of their history where it's such a massacre caused by one family happened over a tremendous period of time, as it should be taught, instead of being combed over and be like, oh, that didn't happen. Oh, none of that happened. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that, my friends, is the lovely true crime case of Sawney Bean. And if you're wondering why I'm looking down, you probably can tell by looking at the other little part of my screen. That is how I have decided to tie back in my true crime into these cases, as I will sit down and talk about it, and I will be creating at the same time. Kind of like what I did with my Thornus Christensen case, where I sat down and I was drawing as I was retelling. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's true crime case, and I will see you guys in another video. Bye, guys.